My boss climbed into my lap at sunrise, her hands gripping my neck like I was the only thing keeping her from sinking. The ocean breeze carried salt and tension as she whispered, "Don't move. He is watching." I froze, my book slipping from my fingers to the sand. This was not the woman who ran boardroom meetings with a sharp pen and sharper words. This was someone scared, pale, trembling, her usual polished demeanor replaced by a raw, desperate need. My name is Jude Harlow. I work as a content strategist for a software firm in a city that never slows down. My life follows a strict rhythm: early mornings at the gym, days buried in spreadsheets and campaign drafts, evenings spent alone with takeout and a podcast. No dates, no drama, no surprises. 2 years ago, a breakup left me craving calm, and I had found it in predictability. Or so I thought. That Saturday, I had fled to the coast to escape the noise, seeking solace in an empty stretch of shore before tourists arrived. The sky blazed pink and orange, the waves hummed, and I had let myself believe nothing could disrupt this peace. Then she appeared. Elena Voss walked fast along the water's edge, her dark hair in a frayed braid, a plain gray shirt and rolled-up denim pants replacing her usual tailored blazers. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her posture rigid, like she was running from something she could not outpace. I recognized her instantly, our department head, the woman who could silence a room with a single glance, who never showed a crack in her composure. Here, she looked fragile, almost small. Before I could decide whether to wave or pretend I had not seen her, a man emerged from the dunes. Tall, wearing a dark jacket despite the warmth, his gaze locked on Elena like a target. He called her name, and she flinched, actually flinched, before changing course and heading straight for me. "Jude," she said, her voice tight as a wire when she reached me. "Please. He is my ex. He will not leave me be." Before I could respond, she grabbed my hand. Her palm was cold, her fingers shaking. "Pretend we are together. Just for a minute." I nodded, my mind blank. I pulled her down to sit beside me on my towel, but she leaned in closer, too close for comfort, too close for a coworker, until her shoulder pressed against mine. "He needs to believe it," she whispered. "He has been following me for years. Texts, calls, showing up where he should not be. I thought coming here early would keep me safe." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her gently into my side. From the corner of my eye, I saw the man stop 50 feet away, pretending to check his phone while his eyes bored into us. "Talk about something," I murmured. "Anything normal." We chatted about the weather, about the seagulls circling overhead, about the book I had been reading. Elena flipped through the pages, her laughter soft but forced, her gaze darting back to the man every few seconds. He paced slowly, a predator biding his time. Tension coiled in my chest. "He is still watching," she whispered, her leg brushing mine. "We need to make this more convincing." Before I could process her words, she shifted. Elena swung one leg over my lap, settling onto me like we had done this 100 times, her arms looping around my neck. My heart hammered so loud I was sure she could hear it. I could feel her warmth through her shirt, the weight of her trust, the way her body relaxed slightly against mine. I rested my hands on her waist, my fingers brushing the soft fabric of her pants. "Are you all right?" I asked quietly. She nodded, her forehead pressing against my shoulder. "Thank you," she breathed. We stayed that way for minutes, talking about nothing: tourist crowds, coffee shops, the way the sun glinted off the water, while her ex watched from a distance. In that moment, with my boss in my lap and the world narrowing down to her quiet breaths and the man's stares, I knew my peaceful, predictable life was gone for good. Eventually, the man turned and walked toward the parking lot. Not in defeat, but in a way that screamed he would return. Elena let out a long, shuddering breath. She did not move right away, her arms still around my neck, her body still pressed to mine. "He is not gone for good," she whispered. "I can feel him lingering." "But he backed off," I said. She lifted her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For the first time, I saw her, not the unshakable boss, but a woman carrying a burden no one should bear alone. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For dragging you into this. For putting you in an awkward position." "You do not owe me anything," I replied. "You were scared. Anyone would have done the same." She slid off my lap and sat beside me, her hand finding mine and lacing our fingers together. Her touch was no longer shaky, just firm, like she needed the connection to ground herself. The beach was filling up now, families spreading towels, kids chasing waves, couples walking hand in hand. Normalcy returning, while we sat with a secret heavy enough to drown the moment. I did not want this to touch work, she said softly, staring out at the water. I did not want anyone to see me like this. Weak. I almost laughed. Weak was the last word I would use to describe her. Surviving something like this does not make you weak, I said. It makes you strong. Stronger than most. She turned to me, her expression softer than I had ever seen it. You are different outside the office, she said. Less reserved. More present. You are different too, I replied. More human. She smiled faintly. Do not tell anyone. We sat there until the sun climbed higher, scanning the crowd for any sign of him. When Elena said she could not leave alone, not with him possibly waiting, I suggested the boardwalk coffee shop. Crowded. Public. Safe. Please do not let go of my hand, she said as we stood. I did not. We walked side by side, our fingers intertwined, the man's gaze burning into our backs until we reached the cafe. Inside, the buzz of conversation and clinking mugs felt like a shield. We ordered drinks and sat in a corner booth, our knees touching under the table. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, her fingers tightening around the warmth. I am sorry you lost your quiet morning, she said. I did not lose it, I replied. It just turned into something else. She laughed, a real, light sound that made my chest feel lighter. You have a way with words, she said. Only when I am nervous, I admitted. That made her smile again, a genuine one that reached her eyes. We talked for hours. At first, about work, failed projects, tricky clients, intern mishaps. Then, slowly, the conversation drifted to deeper things. She told me about the years with her ex, how it started with grand gestures and late nights, then twisted into control. He checked her phone, questioned her every move, hated when she spent time with male coworkers. Ending it had taken every ounce of courage she had. I told her about my breakup, how I had closed myself off to avoid getting hurt again, how silence had started to feel safer than connection. Funny, she said, stirring her coffee. We both hide in plain sight. When we left the cafe, her ex was gone. I walked her to her car anyway. Can you drive me home? She asked quietly. Just to be safe. I agreed without hesitation. The drive was calm, almost intimate. Soft music played on the radio, and we stole glances at stoplights. When we reached her apartment building, she sat in the car for a minute before unbuckling her seat belt. Thank you, she said. For seeing me. Not just my title. Not just the woman who runs meetings. For seeing me. She handed me a slip of paper with her phone number. Call me if you need anything, I said. No, she replied. Call me if you want to. Not because of him. Just because. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed the day in my head, the way she had trusted me, the way her vulnerability had felt like a gift, the way my heart had raced when she sat in my lap. I knew this was not the end. I just did not know how deep it would go. The next morning, I woke to a text from her. Everything is quiet so far. Thank you again. I replied, glad to hear it. Let me know if that changes. The texts kept coming, short check-ins at first, then jokes about work, then late-night rants about bad meetings and even worse takeout. She shared thoughts she said she had never voiced to anyone else. Slowly, the line between boss and employee blurred. A few days later, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee after work. Not as your boss, she said. Just as two people. We stayed at that coffee shop until closing, talking about everything and nothing. She relaxed around me, her shoulders dropping, her laughter coming easier, the tension in her jaw fading. I found myself opening up too, telling her things I had not shared with anyone in years. We started seeing each other more, walks through the park, dinners at quiet restaurants, nights on my couch eating pizza and watching old movies. No labels, no pressure. Just space where she could breathe, and I could feel needed. But the shadow of her ex never fully lifted. One Friday night, a storm hit hard, rain lashing the windows, thunder shaking the walls. My phone rang at 10 p.m. It was Elena, her voice trembling. He is here, she whispered. Outside my door. He is yelling. Please, Jude. I grabbed my keys and drove through the rain, my heart in my throat. When I pulled up, her ex was pounding on her door, screaming her name, his face twisted with rage. I parked and ran to her building, stepping between him and the door. "Leave," I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. He turned, his eyes narrowing. "This is none of your business," he snarled. "It is now," I replied. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. Something in my tone must have scared him, because he backed away, shouting threats as he fled into the storm. Elena opened the door the moment he was gone. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing like she had been holding it all in for years. I held her tight, rubbing her back, saying nothing. Sometimes words do not help. Sometimes you just need to be there. I stayed the night, sitting on her couch while she talked, about the fear, about the years of looking over her shoulder, about the way she had started to believe she deserved it. I listened, no interruptions, no attempts to fix it. Just presence. The next morning, she made a decision. She went to the police, filed reports, handed over years of evidence, texts, call logs, photos of him showing up at her work and home. I was proud of her. But strength has a price. By Monday, rumors were swirling at work. Whispers in hallways, stares in meetings, people connecting dots they did not understand. HR called me in, talking about boundaries and perception and the company image. I left that office feeling smaller than I had in years. That night, Elena showed up at my apartment, soaked from the rain, a grocery bag in one hand and determination in her eyes. She did not apologize. She did not back down. She took my hand and said, "I am not running. And I will not ask you to run either." In that moment, I knew whatever this was between us was real. Real things are never easy. We sat on my couch while the storm raged outside, eating takeout and talking about what came next. We had no answers, but we had each other. A week later, her ex was served with a restraining order. He fought it at first, leaving angry voicemails that only strengthened her case. Then he disappeared. We heard he had moved out of state, but no one knew for sure. All that mattered was the silence. For the first time in years, Elena slept through the night. Healing was slow. Some nights she still jumped at sudden noises. Sometimes she checked the parking lot twice before getting out of her car. But she got better. Her shoulders relaxed. Her laughter came without effort. She started to believe she was safe. Work changed too. The rumors faded, replaced by respect. Elena addressed the team, telling them she had been dealing with a personal issue but that it was now resolved. She set boundaries, reminded everyone that life does not stop for deadlines, and the office became a quieter, more human place. As for me, I changed too. I stopped shrinking into the background. I spoke up in meetings, led projects, took risks I would have avoided before. Standing up for her had taught me to stand up for myself. The quiet routine I once clung to no longer felt like safety. It felt like a cage I had outgrown. We did not announce our relationship. We did not rush into anything. We just existed, together. Her toothbrush sat beside mine in the bathroom. My favorite tea was stocked in her kitchen. We cooked together on weekends, took long walks after work, and spent quiet nights talking about the future. One evening, we went back to the beach where it all began. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. We stood barefoot in the sand, the waves brushing our ankles. "Do you ever think about that day?" I asked. She squeezed my hand. "Every time I close my eyes," she said. "You changed my life." We changed each other, I replied. Fear did not disappear. Doubts lingered. But we faced them together. No walls, no pretending. I learned that love is not about saving someone or being saved. It is about staying. About choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away. That morning at the beach started with fear and a desperate plea. It ended with trust. And somehow, it turned into the safest place either of us had ever known. If this story resonated with you, if you believe love grows from courage, trust, and choosing each other through the storm, like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share heartfelt romances about healing, vulnerability, and the magic of finding love where you least expect it. Comment below, stay brave if you have ever found strength in an unexpected connection. We want to hear your story.